Okay, we get on to the regular business. The first appeal that we have is 13006. That's for Paul Pettinga of 10248 Loma Circle, Grosse Ile, Michigan, 48138. And what we want to do is, our normal procedure is to have Brian Borden come up and give us an overview of the variance, so that everybody is on a level playing ground, so that we understand what exactly we're dealing with. And then after that, then we have the person who is requesting the variance come up and make their case for the variance. So, Brian, do you want to come up?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Beautiful. Everybody hear me okay? Whoa. All right. As you noted, Mr. Chair, first case this evening is for the parcel at 10248 Loma Circle. The request is a dimensional variance request. In this particular case, the applicant seeks two variances, both related to the expansion of an existing non-conforming building. Our subject site is this parcel here. As I'll show you in a moment on the site plan, it is, I kept looking at this trying to think of what to call it. It's kind of an upside down rotated L, and then Tony just looked at it and said it's a 7. And I'm like, why didn't that come to me 2 weeks ago? So as opposed to an L-shaped property, I'm going to call it a 7-shaped property. But again, this is it right here. The site does contain an existing residence as well as an existing detached garage. We are on the north side of Loma Circle, and this neighborhood is just east of West River. Subject site and the residences on Loma Circle are all zoned R1B, which is a single-family designation. There's a mix of other zoning in the area. Some of the property, as you move further east, is zoned open space. You can start to see there's quite a bit of wooded area in here, and it actually continues further to the east. And the property to the north is actually zoned multiple family, and I just kind of snuck in the backside of that. You can see there's a carport building here, and then you can see a couple of the multiple family structures just at the very top of the aerial photo. There are 3 particular sections of the ordinance at play tonight. The first is Section 3.5, which establishes the dimensional criteria for the single-family districts. The second is 18.6, which provides direction when we're dealing with non-conforming buildings. And then the last is our old standby, 23.5, which are your review standards upon which you are to make your decision pending yet this evening. Here's a look at the site plan. Of course, to mess up everything I just said in my lead-in, I rotated the plan such that it would fit better on the screen. So north is actually facing left. The frontage is here. The multiple family I referenced would be to the left side of the screen. Existing residence is highlighted in blue. This is the existing detached garage. There are 4 separate components to this project. I'm going to kind of walk through them individually. The first would be a proposed addition on the east side of the residence. That would be here. The second is on the south side of the residence, or the front of the residence, if you will. The third is off of the west side of the residence. And then there's actually an addition proposed to the detached garage. That last one, as it relates to the garage, actually is compliant and meets all requirements and is not subject to your review or decision this evening. Our focus is related to the residence itself. The real issue that we're dealing with is that we have a non-conforming building by virtue of a reduced rear yard setback. There is a slight angle to it, believe it or not. It varies by about a foot. But at this corner, it's just under 27 feet. It's noted on the plans as 26.7. And as you move further west, it actually is about 27.4 feet, about 27 and a half feet at this corner. So slight shift, varies by almost a foot, not quite. The first two items that I spoke of, the east side and the south side or the front, these two additions both comply with all current requirements. The issue is that we're expanding a nonconforming building. So the reason the applicant's before you this evening for these two is that they need a variance to build these to expand the nonconforming building. I'll get to more on that momentarily. The third addition is actually the one that requires the second variance, if you will. Not only is this an expansion of a nonconforming building, but their intent here is to match that established rear yard setback. Mm-hmm. So in essence, what they're seeking to do is not only to expand the nonconforming building, but also to put in an addition that provides about a 27.5-foot rear yard setback. In this particular district, 40 foot is the minimum setback requirement. So a quick overview of the ordinance. As I referenced at the outset, 18.6 provides regulations for nonconforming buildings. 18.6A has provisions that in certain instances allow for the expansion of a nonconforming building. It's a test of 3 specific items. In this particular case, 2 of those standards are met for the additions to the east side and the south side. But in this particular case, you'll hear me reference on occasion, the township has a 90% rule, is what we call it. And what that means is that if you have a nonconforming residence that provides 90% of the required setback, and I'm going to try to do the math real quickly, a 40-foot requirement, I believe would be a 36-foot setback. So if this building provided a 36-foot rear yard setback as opposed to a 26-foot setback, they would not need variances for either of these 2 additions. Again, in this case, though, I ran the numbers. It's about 67% of the required setback. So obviously, the test for all 3 standards is not met. Therefore, they need a variance. And in this case, they need 2 because of that rear yard setback issue. 23.5B lays out the review standards. These 14 items are all addressed in greater detail in my review letter. These are the standards upon which you are to make your decision. Think about them as you go through the request in your mind, and obviously think about these with any questions you may have either of myself or of the petitioner. So with that being said, just a brief overview of my review letter. As I noted, existing residence is nonconforming due to its reduced rear yard setback. The applicant is requesting 2 variances from you this evening. The first to expand a nonconforming building. The second is essentially a rear yard setback variance to match that existing line of the residence. In terms of compliance, in this case under your standards, the practical difficulty test, compliance would essentially prohibit any expansion or addition to this particular residence. Because it does not meet that 90% test, the only thing that could be done to this residence would be internal renovation or repairs or improvements, but nothing that would physically enlarge the structure. Generally speaking, when owners have parcels of this size, the property is a little over an acre, and they can build compliant additions, that's usually something that would be allowed. In this case, we have the 67% of the setback requirement. As I've noted in my letter, obviously it's your determination to make, not mine, but you could find that to be burdensome in this particular instance in the language of your ordinance. As I noted, outside of the variances that are requested, all other dimensional requirements are met. We've run the floor area and lot coverage ratios, so this house does not, or the house and garage in combination are compliant. They are not overbuilding the lot in essence. We are good in terms of the average neighborhood ratio on both of those instances. And as I noted at the outset, we are dealing with a somewhat oddly shaped lot. The upside-down rotated L, or the 7, however you want to look at it, whichever is easier, is certainly a unique circumstance, not something we see every day, and not something if we ever see a new subdivision or a new site condo, or even during a lot split. L-shaped lots are something that we generally would like to avoid. They do oftentimes result in the need for variances. And because of this shape, this is an older residence, and I'm speculating here. My guess is that the reason it is much closer to the rear lot line is because of the shape of this particular lot. If it were fully compliant, the home would be pushed up into this area, and that's the narrowest point of the lot. So in essence, it appears to me, the development trend of this site would appear to me that they pushed it back to take advantage of providing a little bit more space on the sides and around them from their neighboring property owners. And then the closing point is just really a summary of all of the other standards, all of the other remaining 14 standards. Given the nature of the project, given the nature of the surrounding land uses, particularly the fact that we have a multiple family development north of the site, which generally speaking is the most impacted by the reduced setback, and is a more intensive land use than what we have at this site or generally in the Loma Circle neighborhood, we don't see or we don't expect there to be adverse impacts upon elements such as public safety, light and air, land values, surrounding properties. Traffic flow will not be affected, and lastly, neighborhood character would be another point. So, Mr. Chair, that's all I have at this point. I'd be happy to take any questions that you or the board may have.
Are there any questions?
Brian, I noticed that the on the southwest setback is 6 foot 4 inches. I know you said it's all good.
Yep.
Since there's no property on the other side, I was concerned about what's between the two structures, but obviously there's nothing there, a neighbor. But is it of any concern there's little access to get back there at 6 feet, or is that not a concern?
In my opinion, it's not a concern. 6 foot is the minimum setback for this district, so the 6 foot 4 inches, they actually, albeit not by much, but they actually slightly exceed the minimum for the district. So I don't envision that's going to be any cause for concern.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Hearing none, what I'd like to do then is call up the applicant, Paul Pettinga. Is Paul here? Paul?
This is my architect, Rick Bowles. He's going to go through it with you guys.
Paul, can you give us your name and address?
Yeah, Paul Pettinga, 10248 Loma Circle.
Okay, and then you have your spokesperson.
Is Rick Bowles.
Rick. Okay.
Hello, I'm Rick Bowl. I'm representing Paul Pettinga tonight at this appeal hearing. And Brian did a wonderful job of explaining all the stuff that I was about to tell you. So I think I've got a couple of things that might give you a little bit more insight into the project, but Brian covered everything. Let's see. This one. Hello. Can you hear me with this or not? Is it operating? All right, well, we'll stick it right here then. Can we turn the overhead on? So that, do I get to do that, or is that?
There you go.
Well, there we go.
It's magic.
That is magic.
Brian,
This is the same site plan that you were just looking at. What I'd like to do is go through a little bit in detail about what these boxes are and explain kind of the project some. Is that this is the existing house right here. This piece that's the 6 foot off the adjacent property line is a new double or 2-car garage. This piece in the front is an expansion of the master bedroom suite and the addition of a bedroom. And then in the interior of the house, we're redoing the kitchen and some of the laundry spaces. The piece that we're actually extending the back line of the house is an enclosing of an existing covered porch into a foyer area and the construction of a new covered porch adjacent to it. And if I can direct your attention to the screen here, this is a view looking, it would be southeast at that area that I just described. This is the foyer area that we are enclosing, and it's a 10-foot length along that back property line. And then this is the covered porch, which is a 20-foot length along that back property line. These are the balance of the building elevations. This is a perspective looking southwest. This is the back of the garage. This is the existing structure, and you can see beyond there the covered porch. And then this is looking northeast. This is the covered porch and the bedroom addition. And then just to finish out, this is the front of the garage and the bedroom addition on the front. I think that's all I've got to say about the building project. I do have a drawing that probably will help you orient yourself to the site a little bit. It's primarily the same one that Brian showed you. Except that it's at a little bit larger scale. This is the site that we're talking about right here. This is the Hawthorne Glen development to the north. This is the open space that Brian referred to, adjacent to the airport. And I think there are a couple of things that are critical when you take a look at this photograph, is that this area across the back is where we are short on the rear yard setback. And the adjacent property is multifamily, so it is a more intensive usage. But I think there are a couple of mitigating factors there that would reduce the impact that renovating the structure might have. And it's basically the fact that we're about 100 feet from any of the residential buildings in Hawthorne Glen. And the development that's actually paralleling the property line there is the garages that are for these first two units. And then there also is actually a significant amount of landscaping that's existing across the back. And you can see that here. This is the existing hedgerow that's between the garages and this house. And then there also is a 6-foot privacy fence that's existing that I haven't got a real good photograph, but you can see that here. This is a winter shot, so the landscaping isn't covering it up. Mm-hmm. And that's an existing fence that I believe was constructed by Hawthorne Glen. And the other properties, we actually have very little or no impact on the properties on either side. There's no construction. The construction on those is up next to Loma Circle. And we are, on this side, we're meeting the setback requirements, and on this side, where we're encroaching on the rear yard setback, there's a significant setback from that particular property line. So I think it's our position here tonight that we have very little impact on the adjacent properties, either to the north at Hawthorne Glen or the east and west, which is the immediate single-family residences, and that we petition the board to approve this request for a zoning variance, which is actually, as Brian explained, a two-step variance. It's a variance to expand an existing non-conforming structure, and then it's also a variance to permit a residential addition in a rear yard setback. And I guess if anyone has any questions, I'd like to try to answer them.
Does the board have any questions? Hearing no questions, I'd like to address the audience. Are there anybody in the audience that wants to address the issue? Yes, do you want to come up with your name and address?
I'm Dave Latimer from 10168 North Loma Circle. This addition improves this property, and one thing to be considered is that the rear yard setback is to a easement line and not to an adjacent property line. There's probably a 12, 15-foot easement, and that's a power line easement, so you do have an additional 12, I believe 12 feet is that easement. So you're talking about 39 feet to the next property line. So you're almost there. It also improves the property. One thing about the configuration is this lot was owned by two people at one time, and that's why it's split the way it is. They kept the property, the houses with one piece, the other piece became another residence. I think you should approve this. That's all I have to say.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Mr. Patinga, or Mr. Chairman, I see now that you're going to have a garage that's attached to your house, is that right? So you have a separate garage that now is going to be enlarged. My only concern is, just want to ask you, you're not going to be running a business out of that second garage?
Just for toys.
Toys. Okay. I can appreciate that.
We don't have a basement in that home, and we need all the space we can find.
Okay.
How old would you say your house is?
It's probably built in the early 50s.
Okay.
Are there any other comments from the audience? Hearing none. Are any comments from the board? The board have anything to say? Hearing no comments, then what I'd like to do is entertain a motion on the variance. Can we have a motion?
Move to approve the first variance and allow us to expand the non-conforming structure.
Do you have any backup reason?
But it's for the simple fact that the house is already there, and it's already at that extension or that dimension from the backyard, and also the fact that it will have no impact on a parking structure for Hawthorne Glen. I don't think it's any problem in allowing them to expand the existing non-conforming structure to that side.
Okay, can we boil that down to like a simple motion? So you're saying approve the variance, and the impact on the surrounding properties are negligent?
If any. I don't think there's any.
If any. Any other comments? Hearing none, okay, we have the motion. Do we have a second? We have a second. Any comments? Hearing none, can we have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to abstain.
You'd like to abstain?
Yes.
Okay. We have one abstention, so we have five approvals, one abstention. The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was just the first one. There's two variances. The first one was the conforming structure. The second one is to the setback.
Okay, we have the we just addressed the setback,
No.
No,
we addressed the non-conforming lot,
Additions.
the addition. Now, okay, so we have the setback now. Okay.
correct.
Okay, so, Brian, is that, now, normally, we have to,
You just, the motion was very specific to the first variance.
yeah, so...
I would suggest that you're in position to make a motion on the second variance.
Okay, so normally, the way we handle it is we've covered both
Sure.
variances together. Now we're separating. So that's normally how we handle it. So-
Fine.
Okay, so so we approved the first variance. Now we'll go with the second, which is the setback, your rear yard setback. Could we have a motion for the rear yard setback?
I'll make a motion to approve Appeal 13-006 for the rear yard setback, which is equal to and not encroaching any farther than the rest of the existing structure.
Support.
Do you have any comments? Hearing none. Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed?
I'd like to abstain again.
We've got one abstention, so we have 5 in favor, 1 abstention, so the motion carries. So the second variance carries, so both variances are approved. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Didn't we have 2 correct issues? My fault. I wouldn't argue with you. The way Brian presented it, I thought they were really 2 separate issues. I mean, he could expand the structure.
Our second appeal is appeal number 13-007. It's for a Luke Kraus of 8434 Annette Avenue, Grosse Ile, Michigan, 48138. Brian, do you want to come up and give us your overview?
Be happy to. Thanks again, Mr. Chair. Just flop this real quickly. Everybody's monitors, click back to the computer screen. We good? All right. Second case this evening, property at 24828 East River. This is our subject site right here in the middle of these 2 homes. I've oriented, to give you a little bit better view of the site, oriented this such that north is to the right, so we're facing to the west. The request before you this evening, not all that dissimilar to the case we just heard, is for a single variance to expand a non-conforming residence. Property's on the west side of East River. It is the second house north of Parkway. Site and adjacent properties are zoned R1A, single-family residential. And again, similar to prior case, we're dealing with sections 3.5 in terms of the dimensional standards for R1A, 18.6 with respect to non-conforming buildings, and 23.5 with respect to the dimensional variance criteria. This is a view of the site plan as proposed. Again, here is our parcel sort of in between those 2 homes. The blue identifies the existing. So what we have currently is an existing residence, which is 1 story, along with an existing detached garage. Proposed project really has 3 elements in this particular instance. There is a removal and then a rebuilding of this front area, which includes an open porch, or a covered porch, excuse me, and I believe this is a screened-in porch. This particular addition does comply with current setback requirements. As you can see just in here, the current residence in this location provides slightly less, about a 4.5-foot setback. They are actually taking that out and rebuilding this at a 6-foot setback, which is the minimum requirement. So that's the first component. Second component has to do with sort of the remodeling or reconstructing of the front portion of the existing house. And this is a conversion from a 1-story to a 2-story. This particular case, the residents, they are maintaining that established line, which runs from about 4.5 feet to 6 feet in terms of its setback. That's part of the non-conforming situation here. The worst part of the non-conforming situation is this guy right here. They have about a 7-inch side yard setback for the existing residence. At this particular location, no changes are proposed other than simply maintaining that deficient non-conforming setback. The third component is a slight garage expansion and then a breezeway connection, essentially tying this whole project in together. So they would have covered, I'm not sure if this is enclosed or simply covered. That may be a question for the applicant. I thought I saw a plan today that indicated this might be enclosed. Regardless, it's a breezeway connection to incorporate the garage into the residence. And again, these portions here are shown as being built to the 6-foot side yard setback line. So again, this is compliant with current standard. This is compliant. The rebuilding of this is to a 2-story is at the non-conforming setback line, albeit not the 7-inch non-conforming setback line. I can go back to this slide at any point if we have any questions, which we may. Hearing the laughter. Real quickly, again, Section 18.6A provides a three-pointed test to be met to expand a non-conforming building. I did the math again in this one, and the 0.6 foot side yard setback equates to a 10% of the required setback. So clearly, we're nowhere near the 90% test. Thus, we're already in a position where, regardless of what they do, they have to come before ZBA, other than, again, improvements that would be internal to the structure or repairs to the structure itself without any enlargement. 23.5B, same standards we went through last time, same standards that are focused in my review letter. That being said, quick overview. Existing residence non-conforming, 0.6 foot side yard setback at its minimum. There are portions that extend and actually are still non-conforming but provide about a 4.5 foot. I believe it's 4.3 if I'm not mistaken. So there is kind of the residence is sort of angled slightly where there are some differing lot lines. It's not just a nice straight consistent line, similar to our prior case, although that was slightly shifted as well. In this case, we are dealing with just a single variance because we want to expand the non-conforming residence. As I mentioned on the site plan view, 2 of the proposed additions do comply with current standards. The third is the reconstruction of a portion of the building from a 1-story to a 2-story, but they're maintaining that same exact side setback line, which does range from about 4.3 to 6 feet. As I noted, because of the 90% rule, given the 7-inch setback, if you will, compliance will prohibit any expansion or enlargement of this particular structure. Generally speaking, you could view that as being unnecessarily burdensome in accordance with your practical difficulty test. Most other property owners in the district have the ability to construct compliant additions to their homes. In this particular case, they cannot in the absence of your approval. As I noted, the additions either match or improve upon established conditions. Nothing is remotely close to the 0.6 foot minimum that is currently provided. And then in terms of the unique circumstance or extraordinary circumstance, we're dealing with a parcel that is very narrow, albeit it's quite deep. So it does actually I think it's a little deficient in lot area, but the lot area issue aside, the real trick to this one is the lot width. What we have is we have about a 50-foot wide parcel. This is an 80-foot minimum district. So there's already a 30-foot deficiency. And to be quite truthful, these parcels, most of the parcels in this particular stretch are actually well above the 80-foot minimum standard as well. So this is, when you look at it, when you know that as background, and then you look at the size of these surrounding parcels, you can really see that we're dealing with kind of a sliver of a piece of property. When you apply the setbacks as well as the spacing requirements, because we have a combined 18-foot side yard setback, we also have 18-foot spacing between residences. So when you apply those, in this case, compliance results in just about a 30-foot buildable width. In some districts, that might be okay, that might be workable on a much smaller lot. In the R1A district, in a neighborhood full of relatively large homes on relatively large lots, 30-foot buildable width, in our opinion, is a relatively unique circumstance. That is not something the applicant created. They did not take this on themselves. They're sort of put in this position. Closing point is really that, again, sort of see this as an improvement to an older residence. We do not anticipate that the project would result in adverse impacts to neighboring properties, supply of light and air, public safety, traffic flow, neighborhood character, etc., etc., etc. So, Mr. Chair, that's all I have at this point. Happy to take any follow-up questions.
Any questions? Hearing none. Thanks, Brian.
You're very welcome.
Now, can we get the applicant to come up? Mr. Kraus? Name and address.
Hello, my name is Luke Kraus. I'm currently living at 8434 Annette and hope to move to this residence in the near future. Brian, thank you. It was an excellent summary. I think I just wanted to point out one thing. In the removal in the front area of the porch, there's an existing porch. We actually intentionally reduced the size of the porch to achieve the 6-foot setback. Originally, I had tried to maintain the same line that was there. We would have gone forward about 2 feet, and we decided we'll step the porch in and create meeting the 6-foot setback. So I think we've done all we can in that regard. And one other point in the area that's hashed, hash marks, is really it's utilizing the existing foundation that is there. There's a Michigan basement there. So we are utilizing that existing foundation structure. So it's being built right on top of the same location. The structure just wasn't secure enough. It's I think a 99-year-old house approaching 100 years next year. So it's quite old, but a very nice house, very quaint. As you look in some of the photos that were there, you could see it's really almost a cottage by comparison to the neighbors on each adjacent. So I think converting it to a 2-story will enhance and make it fit in a little better versus the reason that it was built many years ago, 99 years ago, as really a guest house for, as I'm told, the daughter of the house to the north. So it was obviously a lot split at that time, many years ago. So that explains the nature of the reason for its size and on such a small lot. So as I mentioned, I didn't explain. We are now, Maria and I are the owner of this house. We purchased it from my mother-in-law, Beth Jarecki, who is here, and who has lived at this residence for over 30 years. My wife growing up there. And so our desire is to remodel and for her to join us and live with us and enjoy it together. So that's the reason for the need for the expansion, is to create room for my family as well as with her simultaneously. And I think that's all I have. I would like to share with you a letter. I have 5 copies. I didn't make quite enough, but from our neighbor to the south. We have that. I believe we have it.
Well, we got the
Yeah,
email.
you can give it to me, and then what I'm going to do, what I'll do is I'd like to read it into the record.
Absolutely. It's from the same one that you have, because it may be a different neighbor. I just wanted to ensure from the Bolognas.
Yes, Robert.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Dated April 15th, 2013. It says, to whom it may concern, we, Robert, and Linda Bologna, am I pronouncing that correctly?
You are.
Currently living at the location 24850 East River Road, and as the direct neighbor to 24828 East River Road, are informed, supportive, and without concern of the planned remodeling of 24828 East River Road by Luke and Maria Kraus, to the plans as submitted to their application to the Township of Grosse Ile. Furthermore, we are in receipt of notification of the hearing scheduled for April 23rd, 2013, if we are unable to present, we wish this written communication be submitted as record of our support. So that's going on record.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's important. Okay. Do you have anything else?
No, that's all.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
I have a few.
Did you fill this out?
No. Did I fill it out?
Somebody answered all those questions.
I may have been my brother, who's my builder as well. Is there a question?
Several. You say that you didn't know about zoning or building restrictions, but yet you say you knew about the setback. Can you explain that?
I think it was referring to at the time of the construction of which we did not construct this building, if I'm interpreting that correctly.
And you said you just purchased the land, but yet your answer to this was the current ordinance in effect when you purchased the property? You said no. So that's a mistake also?
I just purchased the property after that document was completed within the last week.
But the ordinance was in effect when you
Yeah,
purchased?
I think again, maybe...
So that's another mistake?
Yeah, could be mistaken that it was interpreted as when the house was constructed was the ordinance in place versus my ownership, I guess.
Also, there's a shed behind your existing garage that doesn't show on these drawings. Is there a reason for that?
No, other than just inadvertent miss, I guess.
If he's got, Brian, if there's a shed and a detached garage, does that fall under section 1911C?
Correct. You're only allowed one, I don't think this is working, sorry. You're only allowed one detached accessory building. The site currently has two, though. It's an existing condition.
Right.
And by virtue of attaching...
When he attaches it, he's now down to one, so he's in compliance.
That's correct. By virtue of the expansion in the breezeway, technically, he would bring the second, the issue of two detached buildings into compliance.
So that's another nonconformity then,
Correct.
as the property currently stands.
That's correct.
In addition to the setback. Thank you, that's all I have.
Okay, so the question is, the structure that you're building, is it going to connect the existing garage to the house, to the residence?
Yeah, let me
So
explain,
that's-
because I think it was kind of vague. It is going to be enclosed. Originally it was talked about as a breezeway, but really it's an enclosure connecting to the garage, correct?
Yeah, because that's important. If
Could
it
be all-
wasn't, if it was a separate structure, then we'd have a problem with that.
Yeah, no, the intent is to connect it, fully connect it, enclosure, and will be garage connected to it.
And that changes the calculation for lot coverage then?
That was included in, I'll defer to Brian.
Yeah.
That was included in the,
No, yeah, that entire addition component has been incorporated into the calculations.
Well, when you talk about lot coverage, would the shed be included?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't see that in the calculations on the drawing. So that's another inadvertent error, to use your term. Thank you.
Yeah, now, but you're saying that shed was included in calculating the coverage, the lot
Well-
coverage?
Both the floor area and lot coverage ratios are compliant with
That
this.
was-
I was going to add that before we got into too deep, because I forgot to mention that as part of my presentation, but
Okay.
yes.
All right. Yeah, now, we have, this is a waterfront lot, so you have both, you have two front lots, right? This is a waterfront lot.
Yeah, well, it has the waterfront on the opposite side of the street as well. Not as well, but that's correct.
It really isn't a waterfront lot, because the property across the road is a separate lot.
So the property,
Road separates those two. Doesn't have two front yards.
this is,
I believe the lot description also states
Includes.
that the property to the east of the road is inclusive.
You have a separate description of that, don't you?
I believe it's all inclusive.
It's generally included, Mr. Chair.
so the
Having
question,
said that, I don't believe that, and Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no footage included in that calculation for the land that's to the east of the road on the riverside. It's just the dimensions, I believe, of the lot to the west of.
No, it can be included. It's all part of the lot. The lot is the land exclusive of the right-of-way.
So my question still stands, is this a two front yards?
I think it only stands for a two front yard when the...
It's-
It would be a two front yard if the street was behind the house, it would have a front yard
Right.
on the water and a front yard on the
It's,
street.
it's not a through lot, Mr. Chair, if that's what you're getting at. It has street frontage, it also has water frontage.
Yeah, it
but
has street
in-
frontage
in
and
a
water frontage.
But so does every other parcel in this area.
As opposed to a house sitting on a property that's on the water and then the road.
Correct. Maybe I can help clarify here. The west property line is a rear lot line. In the instance of a parcel on the canal, or in the instance of, say, a parcel on a different part of East River or Park Lane, it does not have a rear yard by definition. It has a street front and it has a water front.
And this is not the case.
That's correct. This property does have a technical, by definition, rear yard as well.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, thank you.
Brian, maybe just a technical question. On the north side, the distance between the two properties, sort of like was asked in the other case, there's 18.9, 18 feet 9 inches, but it narrows under 18. Is that a problem?
That's the existing dimension. The 17.8 is the existing dimension. They're actually cutting it back to provide the 18.9.
Okay, but that doesn't need to be concerned because it's the would that need a variance if it wasn't like
No, because again, I would view that similar to how I would view the south side, similar to how we viewed the Wonderwell case last month. They're requesting a variance to expand the non-conforming building, and what they're doing either matches or improves upon existing conditions.
nothing new is
Correct. For lack, I hate this word because I'm not sure it's a word, but for lack of a better phrase, they are not worsening the established condition. Exactly.
That is one of the reasons we step both sides of the porch in to help improve on both the north and south side.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant? Are there any comments from the audience? Do we have anyone in the audience that wants to come up and make a comment? Yes? Name and address?
Yes, I'm Beverly Jarecki, and I live at 24828 East River Road. And the comment I'd like to make is, this helps me finish up the promises I made to my late husband. And he specifically said, stay here as long as you can, and if you need help, get it, and save the fishing poles for the other grandchildren. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, any other comments from the audience? Hearing none. Any comments from the board? If none, then can we... one thing I want to clarify now, we have the variances that we have. We have a non-conforming lot, a variance. No, we don't have the...
It is a non-conforming
We
lot.
have the 50-foot lot width, which is...
Right, but the variance is tied to the request to expand the non-conforming building.
Okay, so when we make the motion, we're addressing the side yard setback.
You're simply addressing the expansion of a non-conforming
The expansion of the non-conforming structure.
Correct.
But, okay, so what about the not meeting the 6-foot setback from the property line?
the additions do.
The addition does, but, okay, the addition does, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we have the one variance then that we're addressing.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, with that, do we have a motion on the, for the variance?
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I move to approve Appeal 13-007 to improve the current state of affairs of the address of the residents by taking out some sections and adding sections and complying with the setback in the added sections, and making the home more presentable and livable for the applicant and his family.
Are there any comments?
Mr. Chair, could I just make one minor suggestion before you vote? Could, if you wouldn't mind, could you, I think in this case in particular, the narrowness of the lot is really an important consideration. I would just suggest that you add that as part of your basis or for your motion.
You can add that.
As a mitigating circumstance, or?
Essentially, it's a unique circumstance of the property in support of the variance.
Yeah, I would consider that a unique circumstance and a hardship for the building.
Be a friendly amendment.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, you want to redo that motion?
I will add to the motion that the approval is also based on the hardship that the property has a minimal width that is smaller than the rest of the community, and therefore a hardship to the owner.
It's really a non-conforming lot.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah, we have the non-conforming lot.
Right. Non-conforming.
So we're approving an addition on a non-conforming lot, is basically.
Correct.
Lori, what do you got there?
I'll listen back to it and make sure I get it right.
Okay. Is the board, are we together here on what the motion is? Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a support?
Yeah.
We have support. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you. Okay, we have, the next item on the agenda is the next Tuesday we have a training session, so everybody's aware of the training session next Tuesday, and that's at 5:30 here at the Township Hall. Okay, everybody's aware of that, okay.
Will it be up here or downstairs?
Are there any other items that we want to cover? If not, then...
Chairman, just a comment. We had at one time, when the previous chairman was here, decided we would try computer notes, minutes, or whatever. And we must have, and now we're getting these printed ones, and I very much more like the printed ones delivered. It was hard to use just the computer. So I don't know if we ever decided that. I like what we're doing right now. I don't want the computer ones. So now that Tom is gone.
Well, I'm not sure that Tom was the driving force behind that, but yeah, it doesn't really matter. But I mean, if people like the paper to hold in their hands and makes it comfortable, then fine.
I like seeing all of you anyways.
Yeah, and besides, I like tone because
It just
Okay,
seems like the
so-
things we've had are based on unusual conditions.
yeah.
And it's something that has existed for a long time.
Okay, so John, we've heard you, so we're going to continue with the paper delivered to our house, right?
It's hard to print those prints.
They deliver, left on our porch. That's what happens, they're left on our porch.
So thank you, Lori. May I ask, where is the site of our training meeting next week? Downstairs on the first. Oh, right here. Okay.
How long do you think it's going to be?
Taco dinner. Until we eat all that pizza.
Yeah. How much time do you want to give me? That's the real question.
Brian, we're not going to give you that long.
Okay. I can tailor it. I can tailor it to whatever your desire is. I can do it in a half hour. I can do it in 5 hours.
Okay. The previous 2-hour estimate was probably good.
Mr. Chair, to be quite honest, my goal will be to get through everything, ultimately run some question and answer. I think within an hour to an hour and a half should be plenty of time.
Okay.
And if I start rambling and extending my answers, then Lori's going to give me the look of death, and I will.
He knows
At that point, I will immediately.
We might have more
shut up.
questions than you think, so you don't know, but we'll.
That's fine. They don't all have to be addressed in one evening either.
Yeah.
But
All right. Okay.
Wait,
Yes.
Brian, can we
Yes,
get
sir.
an agenda prior to the meeting so we can, if you're going to reference sections in the code, we could be prepared for things.
I will. I tell you what I'll do.
Personally, not for anybody else.
When the presentation is finalized, I will have Lori email it out to you as note pages,
That's wonderful.
and then that way you'll have it in front of you.
Perfect.
Just follow along, and that way you'll have something to sort of jot in the margins of as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that's
That's great.
yeah. Okay, that's fine. Are there any other things that we have to cover? If not, then I'd like to hear a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support? Support. Vote?
Aye.
Aye. Motion to, meeting is